Hello, everybody. This is the We Believe You podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Stephen Cole Smith, here with my lovely co-host and my wife, Lonnie Jean Smith. Say hello, Lonnie.
Hello.
And cool episode today. We got some fun call-ins to talk about, as well as another personal story of ours. But first, this is our first episode, real episode, with sponsors. So we are going to talk about one of our new sponsors, the Treehouse Joint.
Yeah, so we just got this sponsor. It's so exciting. It's a marijuana-friendly treehouse glamping getaway, and they have 3 tree houses that you can pick from. There's the Potleaf Treehouse, which we stayed in for your birthday, and it was so fun and so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great big property up in Monroe, Washington-ish, which is about 45 minutes to an hour north of Seattle. It's super cool. Obviously, cannabis friendly, so you can hang out in these cool tree houses, smoke all the weed you want. There's a lot of cool animals running around. A couple dogs. They have a mini pig named Vegemite.
Yeah, they have 3 tree houses. They also, so along with the Potleaf, they also have the 420 tree house and the hashtag tree house. So really, they vary in price, but they're all located, in the same vicinity, and they share a fire pit and everything. And it was just such a fun, relaxing getaway, and we really highly recommend this to all of our listeners.
Yeah, it's if you're in Seattle and if you smoke pot, and even if you don't smoke pot. Obviously, in our relationship, I'm the smoker and Lonnie is not, but she treated me with a trip there for my birthday. It was fucking awesome. Tracy, the owner there, makes everything super cool. You can also, pay for separate amenities. And then they just have the house, too. You can rent to stay, or, rent just to stay in the house. We use their hot tub. The stars out there are amazing. It's, kind of off the highway, too. Just, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this, and with our new sponsor comes some perks for our listeners. If you go to their website, they're currently under the mountainviewsbnb.com, but they're...
I think they got just treehousejoint.com.
Oh, I think they're switching it, but if you go to their website, you can use promo code WeBelieveYou.
It's just We Believe.
Oh, it's just We Believe.
Yep. So go to treehousejoint.com and passcode We Believe, and orders and stays over $100, you can get 10% off. And so that is really cool. We thank Tracy for that. And it's super cool. You can check them out. I think they were in Northwest Leaf magazine, which is another cannabis magazine here in Washington. And they've gotten some promo from cool people. And, if you like weed and like the outdoors, this is a great place to stay. So check that out. Also, this podcast is brought to you by Dead Northern, which is an awesome Northwest clothing brand. Just gloomy clothes for gloomy people. Check it out at deadnorthern.com. They have a couple different designs. I believe they got their Bernie Sanders pinhead shirt going on again. That was definitely a hit last election season. And it's funny seeing people wearing those shirts walking around. And so, that is it for that. Let's get right into talking about what we are going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm really sorry, babe. I'm so tired today. And so I'm just gonna sloth my way through this.
That is fine. You had a big brunch.
So last night I donated blood on Friday, and last night I drank forgetting that I had donated blood, and I got so drunk off of not very much. And
You also don't really drink that much.
And I don't drink that often, no. And I slept terribly because of being intoxicated. And then this morning I woke up and I ate so much food at brunch with my cousin. And so now I'm just like comatose.
Yeah. But we're gonna persevere. We're gonna get through this together.
I'll do it.
And if you're listening to this, hopefully you are listening on one of the new platforms you can check us out on. We're on iTunes now. Google Play, although it's not searchable yet. By the time you're hearing this, hopefully it is. Stitcher, but they need to get their shit together a little bit. And as always, you can find us at webelieveyou.podbean.com, or you can look us up on SoundCloud, or some of the easier ways to find us. So, yeah.
And we're on iTunes. Did you already say that?
Yeah, I said iTunes.
See, I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
It's going to be one of those days. Luckily, I can just fucking talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
And then I could just be oblivious. Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into this. We actually have gotten a few people giving us their stories now that they've been hearing our podcast, and, we've been talking about it. And so one story we're just going to kind of talk about, because can't really find the notes on it, but it was a cool story by a guy named Bryce Brown, and it involved him and some of his buddies were kind of out in the Cle Elum area in Washington State, and they were taking their quad. They were going camping, and they know the woods pretty well, but they were taking their quads through this area where there's no roads. It's really rough, really difficult to get around, and they got a few miles out into the woods, pulled over, and set up camp. It was just him and one other guy. They had big, but they brought like a really big, like a 12-person tent with them.
Yeah, I remember you saying like 12 or 13%
Yeah, just a
tent
huge,
for two people.
Yeah, which if you're bringing a quad up there,
Yeah.
it makes sense. You can be comfortable, and so they get a fire going, and then they had quite an experience in this area deep out in the woods. And so one of the first things that's strange that happens is like they hear like a herd of elk running around, and like making their their calls to each other and whatnot, and they're kind of down by a lake, but they can hear something chasing them, which would make sense. You're out in the woods, but they just said whatever was chasing them sounded gigantic, and it just didn't sound like anything they had really heard before. And then at some point they just heard one of these elk just get slaughtered. And they don't know what it was. They didn't see it, but when he was telling us about it, obviously in the direction we were talking, he was sort of insinuating that he thought it could have been a Sasquatch, and makes sense. Really, it could have been anything, but there's a lot of things out in the woods in Washington. But the part of the story, usually the guessing on Sasquatch or bear or whatnot would be the part that really fascinates me, but what actually happened to them later in the night is what really kind of fucking freaked me out and made me want to mention this story, so that we're not always talking about the paranormal and the supernatural and the questionable things. So later that night after their fire, they go in and they're in their tent, and at some point in the night they heard something walk down and around and started leaning up and pushing against their tent, and they could see it, and it was freaking them out, so they moved to the middle. But then after a while, that leaves, and they're still sitting up, and they're scared. And, that actually kind of reminded me a little bit of my bear story that I told in, I believe, episode 2 of our podcast, when I thought I had a bear come to my tent. But then, after a while, they finally fell back asleep, and they were woken up to the sound of a truck, and which made no sense to them because there was no roads where they were. They had a hard time getting there in their quads, but they could hear like a big diesel truck.
Yeah, there's no like forest roads or anything up there.
Where they would know, the ins and outs of where they were. But so they heard this truck get closer and closer, and then the light lit up their tent from their headlights, and they heard someone get out, and they walked over and they turned the key and turned on Bryce and his friends' quads, got back in their truck, and drove away.
It's so creepy.
And it was like the very middle of the night. That is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, I remember him saying that they like basically didn't move and just kind of pretended to stay asleep because they didn't want to get basically like murdered.
Yeah.
And the people like went around their tent and did that and then left. And then a little bit later, they heard an elk, what they thought was being pulled apart and like eaten, because they could hear the elk calling, but not in like a mating call or anything, but like in a screaming kind of like the elk was dying kind of way. And I remember him saying that, so there was just like somebody up there and
Just yeah,
something
fucking
big and just all this weird stuff going on.
yeah. It's just I just can't help but like think about them getting the truck out to where they said that they were, and like just these are obviously some just very like knowledgeable people in the woods, that area. You get some of those rednecks out in the woods just
It's
fucking
like
with
the
people.
Wrong Turn movies.
Yeah, I mean, so how
Those
he
are
said,
scary.
so how they resolved it is he said that they just put all their stuff in the middle of the tent, and then when the second the sun came up, they didn't even pack anything. They just collapsed their tent with everything in it, and just put it on the back of their quads and got the fuck out of there.
That's smart.
Yeah, and
Because if you go at night, you're not gonna know I mean, the woods are dark, and there's
Yeah.
no cities around there, so you're not gonna have any light at all except for the light on your quad.
And you got to think too. You got to think smart. Like, if something or somebody is trying to fuck with you that hard to the point where, like, if they were trying to do something worse than just fuck with you, they would want you to leave your tent at night and go out. Like, the best is to just kind of play dead until you absolutely, have to.
Yeah, that's terrifying. That's just creepy people out in the woods or something.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
off the grid, and
That's
Ugh.
honestly.
it's honestly like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, and like we're two people who have spent a lot of our time in our life camping and hiking. So just the thought that you can go a few miles out there and just have someone fuck with you, that's just terrifying. And I'm more terrified of running into a person out there than most things.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you just don't know what they're up to.
yeah, it's like I don't like my odds against like a grizzly bear when like I'm in between that bear and its cub.
Mm-hmm.
But I like my odds better in that situation than against like some backwoods redneck that just like likes killing city boys.
Yeah.
Like they can set up booby traps. So,
yeah.
But
No,
and,
thank you.
and after we watched Wrong Turn 2, 3, and 5.
1, 2, 3.
No, we didn't watch 1. Whatever ones were on HBO Go, it was like 2, 3, and 5. Like, makes me want to go out in the woods even less.
Yeah, we did have a marathon of them, not in any specific order.
Oh yeah. And so yeah, that is Bryce's story. Thanks, Bryce, for sending that in.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce. I'm really happy that you're okay. That's so scary.
Yeah. And this next story is by a guy named Tyler Schwartz, and it's I like it. It's cool. But it goes into the different realm. So here's what he wrote. I'm gonna read this one because I have it right up in front of me. So apologize for like my 9th grade, 8th grade reading level. Clear my throat. I have a story about my grandma possibly receiving contact after her mom died. And her mom made her a promise that she would prove to my grandma that the afterlife exists. So she saw a human figure standing over her for 3 nights in a row, woke up, and my grandpa grabbed his gun and cleared the house. This happened 3 times before my grandma remembered the pact that she made with her mom, and the final night when she woke up to a figure standing above her bed, she called out her mother's name and said, "It's you." And the human figure dissolved in front of her eyes in the dark room with light coming through the window, and she never saw it again. She's a devout Christian and has never embellished much before. When she told me, it was literally the only time I've ever heard her scared or trembling, and it gave me goosebumps. She had trouble even telling me the story. I like that.
Wow, that's.
Yeah.
I like the what's the word I'm thinking of?
I never know. Or watch that, Mike.
The confirmation.
Yeah.
She feels like she got that confirmation of afterlife, especially from her mom. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I promise you that when I die, I'm going to do something to prove to you
Samesies.
that I'm a ghost. I'm going to just haunt the shit out of you.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair.
And actually, I have another story that Tyler sent me too that's totally different scenarios. So I'll just kind of read this because it kind of plays into the first one a little bit more, actually. It says, "Dude, there's a Squatch in Fairham Quarter Park in Redmond, and Redmond is in Washington that he's referring to. Now, I've seen 17-inch bare footprints on the trails about 15 years ago. Years later, in 2008, I was walking in the same park, but on another entrance, around 1 a.m., and he's smoking a cigarette when he's home from college. He hears something that sounded and I heard something that sounded more than my size, 200 pounds plus, walking alongside me, about 20 feet away, and a huge clap, like it snapped a branch off and hit a tree. And then the sound of what appeared to be a cat literally being pulled apart, like ripped in half. No joke.
Oh, that's terrifying.
And I've been to Farrell McWhorter Park and spent a whole lot of time there. I've never seen anything weird.
Yeah.
But it is a interesting, like they have a lot of like cows out there. It's just like it's a park that's like also a farm, so they got a bunch of farm animals. I think I've taken you there.
But the fact too that so when you first said this, and now that I'm looking at what you were reading, it said I've seen 17-inch bare footprints, and when you said bare footprints, I was thinking like bear,
no,
like a
bear, like so
BARE, like a foot,
yeah,
like a bare foot.
Yeah, that look like a human being's bare footprint.
Okay, so not like a
no
rawr.
And in that area, I wouldn't even doubt the bear, but
yeah,
Farrell McWhorter has kind of had a fucked up past. Back in the 90s, like someone broke in there at night and like beat a donkey to death.
Oh,
and like
why?
Because people are fucking awful.
Don't abuse animals.
Yeah,
people.
It was awful.
You're garbage if you do.
But then I remember one time I was stoned, kind of driving there because there's a lot of places that like high school kids go to smoke pot there, and we were driving down the road, and all of a sudden just a white horse crossed the road, and we're like, oh my god, what follows the white horse is death. So we turned around and didn't go.
Oh, I didn't mean to snort.
Yeah. But, so those are some of the stories. We have more that we're going to be talking about in future episodes that people have written in. That's just what we got for today.
Yeah, so send us in your stories. You can do it at the We Believe You podcast at gmail.com, or you could even hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. But we like to share other people's experiences.
Yeah. And, they don't even have to be paranormal. Just, like our motto is, everyone's got a story that no one else believes, and we want to hear yours. And so we're going to jump right into kind of our main story for the day. It's about a nice little ghost-filled date night that we had.
Yeah, we had...
It's a couple years ago, about maybe it was like 3 years ago.
It was longer than that because we were in Shoreline.
Okay, so about 4 years. Man, time fucking flies. So 4 years ago, I'm just kind of hanging out one day, and at the time I was in the medical cannabis industry, and sold a little bit of weed on the side. And one day a buddy just hits me up, and he's like, "Hey, this comedian that I know is performing down in Seattle this weekend, and he's looking for some weed. And, I mentioned your name, and it's like, if you can give him some weed, he'll hook you up with some free tickets." Mm-hmm. And it was awesome. And so we didn't really know the comic at the time, but he had been on like Last Comic Standing, super cool guy. And so, we decided we have tickets to this, comedy show. Let's make a date night.
Yeah, because we didn't, we were going downtown into Pioneer Square. So we I think we were Googling some places, or we were trying to find a place that was close to the venue that the comedy show was going to happen. And we came across a place that we had not been before.
Yeah.
And it was called, and it is called the Merchants Cafe.
Yeah. And so over at the Merchants Cafe, we didn't really know at the time, but you can find episodes of them on like Ghost Hunters. Actually, I think they were the only ones that were allowed to investigate them.
There was the, what's it called? It's the psychic lady. She went in and the psychic lady did one.
I don't know. But yeah, so
But they were on there.
we didn't really know the history of this place, so it was very happenstantial that we ended up there. Um, but so we go in there, we sit down, we order some drinks, we order some food, just like having a normal conversation, and then that's when Lonnie over here starts itching behind her ear.
Well, so when we got there, just to kind of like, so the Merchant Cafe, it's been like an original in Seattle forever. So like, I can't remember what year it was, but when there was the big Great Seattle Fire that basically burned down all of Seattle, part of that bar like remained, and so that's in the basement, and then they were able to build up on top of it. So there's the original bars in the basement,
Yeah.
and which is really cool to like go down and have some drinks at. And it's a beautiful, just very like almost Victorian, like antique place. Like it's got a really fun vibe. But we go in and you walk to a table, and I was like, no, I want to sit at that table. There was something weird about like I was very drawn to a certain table at the place, and I was like, that I want to. For some reason, I have to sit at that table, and usually I don't really care, but like that night I was like, no, and so you got up from the table that you had originally set out, and we moved over.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're sitting there, and we kind of. I don't even know if we had originally ordered yet, but I like take my coat off, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I just like had this pain behind my ear, like on my neck, and I put my hand, and my hair was down, and I like put my hand on my neck where it was that I was hurting, and I was like, ouch, and I like wiped it, and I had blood on my hand, and I was like, what the hell? And I like lifted my hair up to show you, and I was like, is something here? Like, what happened? And you're like, yeah, you have like a perfect like circle, like blister looking
it looked
kind
like
of
a cigarette burn on.
like it looked like a
ear.
burn, and it was like bleeding. And he's like, oh, and you were just like, oh, did you burn it when you were like straightening or curling your hair? Like maybe you, and I'm like, no, I think I would know if I hurt myself that bad when I was doing my
Yeah.
hair.
Kind of know when you fucking burn yourself.
But I was just kind of like, that's weird. And so like it just kind of hurt, and I was like, all right, that's super weird. But I cleaned off when I say it was bleeding, I'm not saying like dripping blood, like
There was blood.
there was a little bit of blood, and so I just kind of like licked my finger and like wiped it up. It wasn't like gushing or anything. And so we're sitting there, and then the lady came over who ended up being the owner, and we ordered dinner. And I don't know if anything else weird really happened throughout
Not that
dinner.
night, but when we told the owner about what happened, that's when she was like, "Oh yeah, that kind of happens here."
Yeah, and she was like, "You're actually sitting at the most active table." She's
And then
like,
she proceeded to kind of fill us in on the history of this place, and starts getting into it. So if you're ever in Seattle, we highly recommend checking out the Merchants Cafe.
the food and the drinks are great.
Yeah, and they got a lot of crazy stories just on that place alone. Like the Merchants Cafe could be its own episode without even like talking about our own personal experiences there. They've had various things because it used to be a spot where a lot of the loggers and gold miners would ship out of Seattle and go up to Alaska, and then like people were getting shanghaied. People get into bar fights, so it's like,
They had a big safe there.
hold on, we're gonna pause real quick. Someone just showed up at our house. Cool, we are back. Sorry, everybody. Just young Kyle entering the house. But yeah, so just people were getting kidnapped. People have like been beaten in there.
Well, and they had a big safe too that when people would get paid, it was kind of like, I want to say it was almost like their bank or something. Like they would have their safe with like their gold and their basically their paychecks, their coin for like their pay. And so people would go to that bar and basically spend their paycheck getting wasted and drinking and everything. So they had this huge safe in there. Beautiful photos, but it used to be a brothel as well. So above is like a hotel was the brothel room. So the table that we were sitting at, the owner proceeds to tell us that, oh, you're sitting at the most active table. Women have had their necklaces ripped off them, and she's like, people just have things happen to them at this table. And I was like, that's weird, because I was so drawn to that table.
Yeah.
And then I showed her my neck, and I was like, well, I mean, it looks like I got like burnt or something. It almost looks like somebody put a cigarette out on my neck. And she was like, oh, I'm not surprised at all. Like, the women don't like it when other women sit at this table. It was like their table. And I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's weird. Well,
Yeah.
we had a great dinner.
Yeah, we had a
regardless.
good dinner, and then we proceed ghost free for the rest of the evening. And we go,
not the rest of the evening.
or no, not the rest, not the evening, not the night.
Okay.
So then we head over to the comedy show, which was fucking hilarious. The comedian Marcus out of Utah is fucking hilarious. He does great impersonations. Just a fucking hilarious, solid dude in general. But I go and I hook him up with his bit of weed, and we get to talking and get to smoking a little weed, and that's when I tell him the story of what just happened. And he just lights up for us telling us this little ghost story. And he's like, I have ghost hunting gear in my hotel room right now. Let's go. And we're like, shit, all right.
And we're like, yeah, let's walk to your hotel, get that shit, and then go back to the bar.
And this hotel is where, the Seattle Comedy Underground Club
Had just put him up for the night.
Yeah, they kind of have a few spots in this hotel where they let comedians stay when they come into town. So they put him up for the night, and this hotel just happens to be one of the rooms that's above the Merchant Cafe.
Yeah, we were like, wait a second, this is where you're staying? He's like, yeah. And we're like, this is the bar that this shit was just happening. He's like, are you serious? And so he had all of his gear with him, and
we go up to his room, he starts pulling out all his gear, and he's like, all the stuff you see on all the ghost hunting shows, he pretty much had in his backpack.
Yeah.
And shout out to Marcus, he actually has, check him out on YouTube. He's got a show called Ghost Hoppin' with Marcus. Him and his wife do that, and it's fucking cool. It's one of the few that doesn't feel phony.
Yeah. And they also have a podcast, Area 51.
Yeah, and they have the Area 50, might be called the Area 52 podcast. Yeah.
I'm going to Google it right now.
Yeah, you should Google that. I'm 99.
Okay, maybe I have the name wrong.
But yeah, super cool guy. And so he turns on all his stuff and whatnot. And we continue to smoke, and we're just kind of hanging out. And
Area 52 podcast.
Yeah, the Area 52 podcast. Yep. And so, yeah, that's a good podcast, too. I found out about a lot of cool stories from there. But, yeah, so we're all just kind of hanging out. Nothing's really going, like, nothing's happening. And then Lonnie takes off her coat. She was looking good.
Yeah, I had my red lipstick on that night, and
we dressed up a little bit for our date night.
Curled my hair, and it was winter time. I do remember that because I had a thick, coat on, and we're hanging out in the hotel room, and Marcus sets up some of his equipment, and I take my coat off, and it was one of those.
It was the voice box things.
Voice manipulator, and I take my coat off, and it had been quiet, so right when I take my coat off, the box just goes, whore.
And
I was like,
and it had been
what?
The box had been on for close to 10 to 15 minutes at this point, and it hadn't said anything.
So I got called a whore by a ghost. Yeah. I don't know how many people out there could say that, but whatevs.
And then
no big deal.
And then it started talking a little more. It kept saying elevate over and over.
Uh-huh.
And then we're like, yeah, we are getting elevated. Ha ha ha. Like, it was kind of funny. I just remember it got kind of creepy, like, but some of the stuff that I think that started to creep us out was like, just an old building being an old building. Like, we heard something in the bathroom, but it was really just like, we freaked out, but it was like probably the pipes.
Then Marcus, I remember we were standing, because they had just like a little kitchen, and he was standing there, and he goes, oh my God, and he like kind of like freaked out or something, and we're like, what? And he's like, did you just run up on me? And we were like, no. And he goes, no, I literally heard like footsteps behind me run up on me. And we were both just like, no, like we didn't do anything.
Yeah. And
Well, and that's when we were like, let's grab the equipment and go down and check out the bar.
yeah. And
So we go
that's
down.
when shit got real.
So then we go down and we're in the bar, but we're like, there's people drinking and stuff, and it's getting kind of late. So we're like, let's go down to the basement, and that's where the original bar is. But it's like it has a gate, so it's only open sometimes. I think when like there's a bartender there, so it's not an always open bar. But the gate was closed, so nobody was back there, and nobody was really hanging out down there. But they have some couches and a few tables, and that's where the restrooms are. And there's some curtains that go, I think, down to the back of the kitchen and stuff. But it's a big, nice. It's a pretty space.
Yeah, it's a cool place to hang out. Yeah, that's when we just kind of busted out the gear. I know Marcus was using his iPhone, just kind of film around, and we were like trying to get the voice box things, but things almost. And this, like, I've always believed in ghosts, but this for me was like the night that I was like, oh fuck, like, they're definitely real.
Well, Marcus was videotaping, and we were seeing just like orbs everywhere, like white orbs going through, and like it's a small space, and it's not like super bright in there. So it's like if it were a bug, it wouldn't have lit up as much. And he didn't have a light on while he was filming. He didn't have like the video.
Yeah, we also weren't doing this in pitch black, which is
the lights. Yeah.
So like a lot of these ghost hunter shows, they'll turn the lights off, and then they see like a fleck of dust go across. But things were just starting to get weird. It sounded like something was tapping on the wall in various points. Yeah, definitely a lot of orbs. I don't remember much voice box action down there.
No, it was mostly feeling, because at one point, like we had heard or something that a couple kids had died there, like in the fire or something. Like there was supposedly the ghost of some kids. But we see these orbs flying everywhere. And so I'm standing there. So Marcus starts filming me, which I wish I could see the footage again. Like I know.
Yeah, there was.
If we can find it, I know he sent it to you at one point. So
no, I don't think he ever sent it to me. I mean, I'm not sure it ever actually got uploaded, unfortunately.
Oh, but so I'm standing there and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna talk to him. Like if there's any kids here and you feel scared or anything like that, I go, you can give me a hug and let me know that you're here. And I like said that you can hug me. And as soon as I took my arms and crossed them across my chest to say hug, an orb like flew into my chest.
And like, me and Marcus, correction for my mom if she listens, Marcus and I, she doesn't see the orb in real life when she does this. We see this thing shoot across the fucking room on his screen and hit her, and the second it hits her, she goes, "Oh my god, you guys, I feel something."
Yeah.
That blew our goddamn minds.
And then I was like, I feel something, and then I said, okay, but I go, if you're scared or anything, you can hold my hand. And right when I said that, another orb shot into my hand. And my hand, like, all of a sudden, like, clenched and tightened, and it was almost like it was cupping. And I remember looking at you and being like, there's something holding my hand. There's something. And I was like freaking out. And my hand was like tingling. And it was ice cold. And it was like in a cup. Like you would hold somebody's hand. Like, like that cup kind of way.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you for letting me know you're here. But I'm kind of scared. Could you please let go? Yeah. At that point, I was like, I'm scared. Could you please let go? And it stopped.
And then not shortly after that is when I freaked out. Because kind of like you're still kind of standing where you were, but behind you is the bar, and there's like a little kitchen that there's a curtain hanging up that blocks the bar from the kitchen. And I literally see the curtain drop, like someone was peeking out from behind it and holding it, kind of holding it up at the top and then letting go. And that's when I immediately was just like, I think I even said it out loud. I'm like, oh, this is fake. I'm like, someone like,
Yeah, you thought you were on Scare Tactics.
yeah, like there.
You're like,
I
I'm
legit,
meeting a comedian. I'm in Seattle.
yeah, I started
all this
piecing
weird
all this
shit's
together.
going on. I'm on Scare Tactics
It's like,
right now.
I'm like, yeah, I literally thought like, you know, this up and coming comedian. It's like I'm on a prank show right now. That's what I thought. Like I legit thought I was on a prank show because I'm like, I'm about to freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm easy to pick. I already believe in this shit.
Right.
And you know, just I'm the easiest one to draw into any situation. It's like, hey, this guy needs weed.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm on it.
Yeah, it was so weird. And so Marcus had shot a couple photos, and he got like some weird, you know, like kind of looking stuff on like the stairs that go down to the basement stuff. Well, at this point, it's like getting close to 2 a.m. and the bar is going to close. So, you know, we have to get going. And we actually even stayed a few minutes after, too. We're like, thank you so much for letting us kind of do our own little, you know, amateur investigation. Well, amateur for us, but Marcus was very experienced in that.
I would love to get like a ghost hunting kit like
Yeah.
he has. But at the same time,
Any ghost hunting kit sponsors out there? Hey.
that'd be fucking crazy.
So after that, we go back up to the hotel room and we're hanging out with Marcus again. And we're just like, holy shit, like all this crazy stuff was going on. This night was so weird. Well, at this point, I think I had my coat off or had taken it off again. And I didn't get called a whore this time. But I was wearing a necklace and I felt a sharp pain go down my neck, like right across my collarbone and down. And I lean forward and I grabbed it and I go, ouch. And Marcus goes, oh my God, move your hand. And I moved it and I like kind of pulled my necklace and my hair back and I had like a red just scratch down my neck. And he goes, have you been itching yourself? And I was like, you just saw me like go, ouch. Like something literally had just scratched me in that room. So I've been burned that night. I got called a whore and then I got scratched. And all these rooms prior had been like the brothel. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, they didn't like me there. They did not like having another woman in their space. Or anything along those lines. And then I think after that we kind of called it a night and went on our way. And we've stayed in touch with Marcus. He's such a great person and he's so funny.
Yeah, we're going to try to get him on this podcast. I'd love to talk to him about this story as well as just some of the ones that I've seen him go through on his YouTube show, Ghost Hopping. Mm-hmm. And his wife, God, I'm just blanking on her name right now. That sucks. But she's like an up-and-comer in the WWE right now.
Yeah, she does a lot of like.
She's real badass. Yeah. But yeah, super cool people. Check out Area 52 podcast and Ghost Hopping on YouTube. He definitely, I think he did that because he was going around all these places doing comedy. And Marty's his wife's name.
I haven't had the pleasure to meet her yet, but
I don't think I have either. But yeah, I wish we could have seen them when they were coming up recently, but when they came through with the WWE is when we were completely snowed in.
Yeah. But yeah, that was our date night. We went home and still to this day it is in our top weirdest unexplainable nights we've experienced together.
I am very glad though that wasn't a prank show.
Right.
It's like neither of us handled it well.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, we were freaked out. And you know, and when I remember specifically when I left the bar before locking out the front door or anything, because we were the last people in the bar. I mean, obviously besides the owner. I stopped and I turned around and I said, whatever is here, you cannot come with me, because I was like, oh, I don't want any sort of attachment because of, you know, how I felt things and everything.
Yeah.
So I remember specifically saying, whatever is here, you cannot come with me. You do not have permission to do that. You need to stay here. And I remember like saying that as my piece to leave, because I was like, I've told them that they're not allowed, and I've, you know, so, and then I asked you, I remember driving home and I go, did you tell them that they can't come with you? And you're like, oh no, I forgot. And I was like, what? Because then, like, that can lead into more stories of our shoreline house where some weird stuff had happened. But I remember, shortly after that in Shoreline, I was cleaning the living room and looking into our bedroom and seeing a really tall, like black shadow kind of looking thing, like walk across our bedroom. But I had been grabbing dishes to move into the kitchen, and I kind of went quick and saw it, and I didn't think of it until like seconds later, and I kind of shook my head, and I walked back into the living room, and I remember peeking into the bedroom, and I called your name, and I was like, Steven, and you were in the bathroom, and I was like, and you opened the bathroom door, you're like, what's up? And I go, were you just in the bedroom? And you're like, no. And I was like, something's walking in the bedroom.
I will interject though, because that leads into another story that I didn't think I was going to talk about on this one, but since you led into it now, I just kind of have to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that followed us home from the merchant, and that's where my fun story comes in. So I'm just going to close this with that, I guess.
I guess that will be another episode. Okay, we have our agree to disagree on the beginning of it all in the Shoreline house, but
yeah,
I think that was definitely a night that I'll never forget, and it's probably the most interesting. And I wish I still had, you know how times are. You go through cell phones and you lose all your data and stuff. Well, I'm probably on my 10th cell phone since then, and I unfortunately don't have the photos of my scratch. I don't have the photos of my burn on my neck because I remember taking them, but I don't have them.
Yeah.
And I wish I did. It would have been great to have them still.
Yeah. But I believe you.
Thanks, babe.
And that's kind of the thing too. It's like we could show people the pictures, like if we had them, which we don't. Like we could show them a picture and they'd just be like, "You scratched yourself."
Yeah.
So it's like the people that aren't gonna take it seriously and aren't gonna believe it never will until it happens to them.
It's true. Well, on that note, though, I can definitely say that look up the history of the Merchant Cafe if you're in Seattle or ever come to visit in Seattle. Like, I would highly recommend that restaurant to go, and even just stop in to get a beer or get a dinner or something. Like, it's a fun place.
And everybody on the staff there has a story.
Yeah.
Like we could literally go. Actually, we should go there with a microphone and just get stories from people. Like there's one of the cool things is there's like a photograph that's on one of the walls, and somebody took a picture, and it's it's a lady just kind of standing there in the picture.
And the background's
and the background
black.
is all black. And there was once someone took a photo of it, and in the photo, it revealed like ink behind the black, and there's more of a portrait. It shows the whole room.
It's like got her vanity and like her shoes on the floor and like a bed, and it's like her living quarters.
And from what I understand,
they've only been able to get it once.
Only once, and I thought she had mentioned something about like the photograph has been like analyzed to like not have been like blacked out.
Yeah. It's just because it's just interesting that she had her flash on. She was taking a picture because it's a photo that is kind of like their logo, and so she was taking a photo of the female in the photo, and it's in a glass frame. So she had her flash on in it, and then she was like, "Oh, I'll redo it," and she redid it. Well, the flash exposed that, but then she tried again, and she's never been able to get it again.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, we tried. We didn't get anything.
No,
we were just doing it with cell phone.
If you go there too, here's another recommendation. If you go there too, and if you ask them about like their stories and stuff, ask them to look at their photo album. They have a bunch of history and everything that they are happy to share with you. At least they were with us. They gave us the photo album, which has the original photos of her taking the pictures of that painting. And just stories and everything. It's just really cool. So it's probably one of my favorite places in Seattle.
Definitely.
But.
Well, cool. That is all for this episode of the We Believe You podcast. We want to thank our listeners, people who have written into us. If you've written into us and we haven't read your story yet, it is coming. We promise. Thanks again to our new sponsors, the Treehouse Joint. Go to treehousejoint.com, save 10% off your stay over $100 using We Believe, and check out deadnorthern.com. They're damp as fuck.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yep, have a good one.